And then Darcy, welcome tonight to Fresh Fiction Book Club. We're so excited to have you. To get us started, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got started writing?
Sure. I live in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon, actually. We had a big snowstorm the other day and it all melted finally. Well, most of it melted today. But that's unusual for us. We don't get a lot of snow. So I started writing, I guess when I was really young. I wrote a book called The Magic Swan. I didn't hear, or I can do show
I was
and
going to
tell.
say, please, you have to show us the
I
magic
can
swan.
do show and tell. This is The
Yes.
Magic Swan. Complete with really bad illustrations. It's a romance. You know, about Albert and Gwen.
Oh, I
Yeah,
already love it.
I know, right? And it's funny, people are talking about different settings, and I chose Albert and Gwen specifically because it's a Welsh name, and my grandmother loved swans, and my grandmother was born in Wales, and so I I wrote a book about swans for my grandma and named them Welsh names, and yeah.
I love that. That's so cute. So I love the fact that you still have the book and
I
you
do.
did. Is that the original? Is that the original copy?
Oh yeah. So like this was something that we did at my elementary school,
Mm-hmm.
and I think my brother got to do it twice, like in fifth and sixth grade, and then by the time I got through 4 years later, they just did it in sixth grade. So I didn't get to refine my process. My brother's books are much funnier than mine. He should be a writer too. Like he is incredibly talented writer as well. But yeah, so this was like a project we had to do, but apparently I was writing anyway. I have a friend that I was really good friends with in junior high, and we reconnected 5 or 6 years ago, and she's like, I always remember you sitting on your bed writing. I'm like, really? I don't really remember that. So I know that in high school I was trying to take my favorite romance novels and write them into screenplays because I thought they should all be movies.
Of course.
And I have always been a historical romance lover. That's what my mom read. I guess she said I started reading like Harlequins, but I don't remember that. I just remember reading like Kathleen Woolowitz and like Rosemary Rogers, which I don't know what the heck I was doing reading Rosemary
You
Rogers
dove
when I
right
was
in.
probably like 14 or 15. Terrifying. If you ever read Rosemary Rogers, they're a little over the top. And so, which isn't to say I have actually written a contemporary series set here in Oregon about a family of sextuplets in wine country.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
What do you find is the big difference between writing your historicals and writing your contemporary series?
Well, as people pointed out, it's the electricity in the toilets. I'm kidding.
That's it. That's the difference.
That's it. No, but it's definitely a shift. It's because, when you're writing historicals, you're constantly thinking, oh, did that word exist then? Or is this an idiom they would use? Or, it's just, there's different things that you sort of second guess yourself about. I don't know how people wrote books before the internet, quite frankly. I mean,
I think about that.
There's no way anybody could write a book a month with, back then. I just don't think so. I don't know how you do your research, because you still have to do research even for modern day. So sorry, I have to get up because someone opened the door and my son is in Japanese class out there and we don't want to interrupt him. So anyway, where was I? Researching.
I'm sorry.
So you're researching even contemporary stuff because you want to make sure that you so I was writing a family that was they were actually brewers. They had it's sort of like it's a local thing. We have this local chain of brew pubs, and I kind of based it on that because they take old historic properties and convert them into their brew pubs and hotels and stuff. It's really cool, actually, repurposing buildings. They don't tear them down.
I was gonna say, is it McMenamins?
It is McMenamins.
Yeah. I'm up in Seattle, so I'm very familiar with their.
Yes, it's totally McMenamins. Yeah. So in my series, they take this old monastery and they're converting it into a hotel and spa and everything. Cool. Yeah, it's totally McMenamins. That's so funny. Yeah, there's even one of the characters is an artist and does the art. Fun fact: one of my kids' art teachers does some art for McMenamins.
Oh, fun. Yeah.
And everybody else is like, what are you talking about? But I branched out, and the next 3 books that came after the main part of the series, they were winemakers. And so I had a friend who was working at a winery, and I'm like, hey, can I come out and tour the winery? And she brought me out on a harvest day, and they have these big harvest lunch. tough research, let me tell you.
Right.
So, and it's the same, like I was in Scotland last year. Someone was mentioning Scotland, and I was in Edinburgh and did a bunch of researchy stuff with my writer pal, Erica Ridley, and my daughter, and actually put it like immediately into a book. So that was fun.
I love that. So you mentioned your mom was one of the ones that gave you your early reads, but had you always been a big reader?
Yes. But
Mm-hmm.
it's funny, I'm kind of a comfort reader. At least I used to be. I don't really do this anymore, but I used to I like to read a series and then read the series again. I have like my comfort reads. And I always really liked even historical fiction. I was reading like Victoria Holt, when I was younger, and those are sort of like Gothics, some of them. So yeah, doing that. But then I was always a big, I loved movies, and I thought it would be really fun to write a screenplay, and I haven't done that yet, but maybe I have something percolating in my brain.
Ideas.
But it's always historical for the most part. I mean, that's just where my degree is in history. I'm just like a history nerd. So
wow. So it was like an easy transition. So before you were a writer, did you have a non-writing job?
Sort of. I was a technical writer, and then from there I moved into project management, which now I'm completely independently published. I used to write for a publisher, but now I'm independently published, and that is a lot of project management in addition to writing. So it's actually a good skill set. So yeah, that's what I did. And then it was really funny because I'd always wanted to write. I had a bunch of books that I'd started. And then I thought, well, when I'm maternity leave, when my daughter was born, my daughter is 22. And when I thought, well, I'm on maternity leave, I'll write a book. I'll write a book while I'm home.
You have all this time. You'll be like, I'm free of time.
Yeah, we're like, yeah, that didn't happen. And so then when my son was born 3 years later, I said, okay, well, I'm staring down 35 here. And if I want to actually seriously finish a book, I need to do it. And so I joined Romance Writers of America, and I focused, and I finished a book, and then I wrote another book, and then
Awesome. Yeah. What was the spark for that first book that you got published?
I am really into secret identities and sort of, the big reveal. One of my favorite historical romances is Almost Heaven by Judith McNaught. And the hero in it is he's like the grandson of this duke, but it's kind of convoluted. But there's this big reveal scene where he's revealed to actually be the grandson of the duke, and the duke comes with him, and they're walking into the ballroom, and it's this really cool reveal scene. And so and I really sort of the superhero-ish kind of trope. And so the first book that I published is I used to pitch it as Robin Hood meets Paris Hilton. I mean, this was a while ago, so Paris Hilton was a thing, which Paris Hilton, I guess, is a little bit of a turnoff, but she redeems. But having a heroine that has an arc like that starts as a spoiled brat and becomes this, more selfless, and falls in love with this incredibly selfless hero who's like Robin Hood. It's, I find readers, they like that kind of arc for the heroes, but not as much for the heroine.
Oh no.
But I love that book. Well, and lots of people love that book. It's called Her Wicked Ways. But I love that book. And then when I wrote the contemporary books, it's a funny story. I was on a writing retreat with a bunch of other writers, and I was in a house with my friend Rachel Grant and Courtney Milan, and we had no heat. We had thought we had smelled gas, and so they turned the gas off, and then in the sort of extra house where we were, they didn't turn it back on. And so I don't remember, I've slept in a tent on Mount Hood and not been as cold as I was that night, but I thought of this contemporary series just completely fully formed in my brain, and I hadn't ever even really read. This is my cat. This is Banana. She is a fan whore. She wants to be, whenever there's a Zoom, she's got to be right. I'm surprised she hasn't just been watching. So, but I hadn't really read a lot of contemporary romance. I didn't really plan to read it, to write it myself, but it just, I had this idea and it was all there.
Yeah.
And
And it came right out, fully formed. I
good.
love that. So what inspired the Phoenix Club? Being this is the 8th book in the series, Insatiable, is what inspired the series originally?
So I really like worlds, right? And people sometimes when you think about building a world, people tend to think of like fantasy or science fiction or something. But in historicals, you really can build just as rich of a world, even within London, or like I write books. I have a series right now that I'm writing with Erica Ridley, and it's all about a matchmaking festival in a small town called Merrywell. And it's definitely like this world building. And I love just like sort of like a big cast of characters and sort of like just this familiar place where you go and that feels good, and just planned it out over 8 books. And I also really like what the Phoenix Club is it's a place where people who are maybe not accepted everywhere else in society can come. And that was the whole conceit of the club. The guy who formed it, Lucian, and he's the hero of Insatiable, which I purposely made his book the last book because he is in all the other books. And so by the time you get here, I mean, readers were like, okay, when are we getting Lucian's happily ever after?
Right.
Coming.
Which is a lot of pressure for you as an author, you know,
Yes.
to build up to that. Yeah.
Seriously. And it's a long book. It's the longest book in the series by a little bit, but there was a lot to tie up. And I just felt like his story was big because he had literally been a good secondary character in every single book. So yeah, I had to make it really, hopefully it's worthwhile.
Yeah. Did you feel the pressure of finding the right partner for him?
I did. And then because I didn't know who it was at the start, I kind of had an idea, but then it just didn't pan out. And then I think when I was writing the 3rd book, which is about his sister, it's like she and his best friend fall in love, that trope. And she, that hero's sister, so it's the brother and the sister and the best friend situation, she had a small part in the book, and I'm like, you know what, I think she's the one. And it was really funny the way that happened, because usually I'd have it in my head beforehand, but no, she was a secondary character I introduced, and then I went,
I
it's
love
you.
it. Well, and I love that Lucian is the kind of man who always puts everyone before himself, and often to his own detriment. What did you find fun about shining a light on this kind and giving man, and especially spending 8 books sort of building to his resolution?
Well, I think it's a couple different things, because he had kind of this rakish reputation when he was younger, and he still kind of has that, but he has this really bad relationship with his father, and we don't figure out what that's about until this book. And even that, like, I knew pretty much what it was, but even then writing the book, it was like, oh, get that plot twist. I love it. And it
love
all
when
just
I
works
surprise
out.
myself.
I know, right? I love it when that happens. And so I really sort of wanted to take that sort of rakish character and turn him on his head a little bit, and have him be someone that is just, I have I get the whole Alp hero thing, but I definitely don't get the Alp hole hero. Like I'm just not good at that. I like heroes who, have a good moral center, I guess, and are really, even though they may not be, I mean, I've got a hero in this series who kidnaps his heroine. So, his moral center is maybe a little off kilter, but he's doing it for the right reasons. So yeah, I think that kind of inspires that.
I love that. Well, we talked a little bit about the fact that even in contemporary, you have to do research. Obviously, that's a huge part of historical romance. And then with Kathleen's backstory, like, she is a scientist, she's interested in researching. What sort of research did you do into the type of research that somebody like Kathleen would have done in that time period?
So that can be difficult when you're writing historical, because if you learn, because what we know now is not what they knew then.
Right.
And so you can't really, I mean, I've done this before. I go down a rabbit hole and I've gone too far, because now I gotta go, okay, did they really know that? They didn't know that. And so in some cases, I try to keep it purposely a little bit vague. And in her case, I mean, she's interested in mating rituals, and she's observing animals and so forth, and then she's thinking about people.
Mhm.
And I'm just sort of, she's autistic. My daughter is autistic, and when I think about my daughter and her quest for knowledge, she, and when she wants to know about something, she will go down the rabbit hole. And so that's kind of what Kat does. She's not formally doing any, joining any, trying to join us any kind of scientific societies, or, reading a lot of scientific papers or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing what she can do to quench her thirst for knowledge. So.
Okay, so what can readers expect from you next?
So it's not, so people love the Phoenix Club, and I know that it was the last book, but they'll show up again. They'll be in my next long series. I'm in the middle of a series. This was the last book that came out. It's called The Runaway Viscount. It's nice and backwards for you. This is a series called The Matchmaking Chronicles, and it someone mentioned house parties. They all take place at a house party, and where different couples kind of get together. One house party happens. The first book is called The Rigid Duke, and then that's 1 year. And then the next year, the hostess was like, well, that was such a success. We matched a couple. We're going to purposely have a matchmaking party. And it's a little bit like a old fashioned key party, where maybe some of the matches don't need to be marriage. And all the women that are invited are either widows or, I guess they're all widows. I don't even think they're spinsters. So yeah. And then I have a new series coming out next week. It's called Lords in Love, and this is the first book. It's called The Gun and the Duke, and I'm writing it with my best author pal, well, one of my best pals anyway, Erica Ridley. This is the second time we've written a series together. So we write 6 books, and one of us writes the even books, and the other one writes the odd books, and we kind of have a common theme. This is, like I said, it's a matchmaking festival, a May Day matchmaking festival in a small town about a day's ride out of London, and it's called Merrywell, because of course. And so yeah, it's really fun. Yeah,
that's awesome.
And those books come out like fortnightly, so it'll just keep you reading for like 6 books for the next 3 months.
That's perfect. So how do you and Erica sort of like figure out how you go about making that sort of a series?
So Eric and I became friends when we were both aspiring writers. So we've been friends for like, I don't know, almost 20 years, I guess. And we talk almost every week, and we just kind of come up with the main conceit, and then we keep a Google spreadsheet with different details and information about characters and places and stuff. And we don't necessarily we'll mention each other's characters a little bit in the books, but they're not interacting. Like, I'm not having scenes with their characters, or they might have a walk on or something, but we try to keep it as simple as possible for us. So, but I think it's fun to have the little mentions for the readers. So.
All right, well, Darcy, we're going to transition now into our fresh facts portion of our interview. These are just sort of fun, offhanded questions to answer. And then after we finish that, I'll turn this over to our readers to ask you some follow-up questions. All right, so Darcy, what is your favorite genre to read?
That varies. It's probably nonfiction right now.
Nice. Yeah. What is one genre that you never want to read again?
I shouldn't say, because I've never even read it, but mafia romance does not really appeal to me. Sorry.
Perfect. That's fine. What is your favorite time of day to write?
Sadly, it's like at night. That's when my brain sort of kicks in. But I think it changes depending on the season and what's going on. And yeah.
What's your favorite time of day to read?
Either when I'm sitting in the car waiting for a kid or something, or before bed.
Awesome. So if you're reading nonfiction, are you an audio reader? Are you a book reader? Do you actually have a physical book? Do you prefer it to be an ebook? What's your preferred format for reading?
I do both. I don't do a lot of audiobooks, but I but I've been doing more of them. Like I just listened to Spare, like everybody else in the world.
Yeah, I listened to that one too.
And I wanted to listen to that book instead of read it because I wanted to
Wanted
hear
his
his
voice.
voice. So, did not disappoint.
Yeah, exactly. There's always some certain ones that I'm like, that's an audiobook. That's the one I
Yeah,
want to listen
right,
to.
for sure.
Who was your first book boyfriend or girlfriend?
Oh, it's gotta be Rourke Beecham from Shanna by Kathleen Woodowis. Yeah, he's pretty. I mean, the heroine goes to a prison because she needs to get married so her dad will stop bugging her. And so she finds a guy who's going to be hanged the next day and said, well, I'll marry him. And that way she's married and dad can leave her alone. Well, as you can imagine, he does not get hanged. And instead he gets sold into indentured servitude on the very ship that she's returning home to the Caribbean in. The Caribbean, that's another good setting for
historical.
London.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that is a very popular book in the book club. I just saw a couple people put in the chat that they love that one. So
he is like he's a really good hero.
Love it. What is your favorite writing fuel?
I don't know. I drink chai tea every day. I don't know that I probably my cat. Well, my cats are not fuel because they sit on my lap and they get in the way. And then I have to like put the computer aside for a few minutes. Okay, we can have a pet session. Then you have to go.
Exactly. They're like, it's a therapy session, Mom. Don't worry about it.
I know. I have like a lot of cats.
How many cats do you have?
A rescue situation. Well, I had 4 before the pandemic, and now I somehow have 7.
Oh, wow. That is a lot of cats.
Yeah. 2 of them
You're giving them a
live
good
outside,
home.
but yeah, they belonged to the neighbors, and one of the neighbors moved. They did ask us before they moved if they could leave the cat here, and he's best friends with the other cat who lives outside. So they want to split him up. So it's a whole thing.
Yeah. But I mean, that sounds like to me, like you have 5 cats and 2 outside cats.
Yes. Yeah.
Those
the
are
one
different.
that belongs to us now does come in periodically, but there's 4 boys now, and they don't all. I mean, one of them, the 5th cat, was the guy who just showed up on our deck like as a kitten, flea ridden and needed. And I was going to just, get rid of the fleas, get him fixed, and then adopt him out to somebody. And I had a couple people that were interested. By the time it took us a long time to get him fixed because the vets were so busy, and it was like a month later, and by then the whole family had like fallen in love with him. And
yeah, he's our cat now.
Yeah.
When I was I guess I was in 4th grade, that's how I got my cat. She was right? Like outside, and we ended up kind of just keeping her and flea infested, just horrible little thing. Her name was Lucky, and the same thing. We fell in love and couldn't give her back.
Sweetie pie. Well, lucky everybody.
Yeah. What is a romance that inspires you?
Romance that inspires. There's a lot, but just one of the most perfectly written romances is Devil in Winter by Lisa Kleypas. And I know Lisa, and she's just the loveliest person. And so that makes it even better, right? And so, yeah, I really, and a lot of books by Elizabeth Hoyt, I find are just exceptional.
Yeah, absolutely. This is perfect for you because this is coming up next week. How do you celebrate a new release?
Not enough, actually. So when my last book came out, I bought Insatiable. I bought myself these like coral colored roses that matched the cover.
Oh, nice.
I know. So I think I started like a thing. So like next week, I think for this book, it's a little bit yellowy and it's daffodil season. So I might get daffodils, and daffodils are my favorite. They were my grandma's favorite, so now they're my favorite. So yeah, that's, other than that, I don't really, because I publish probably 6 or so books a year. So it's but like, I don't know. So I do remember when Insatiable came out, like it was probably late afternoon before anybody said to me, like in my group of author friends said, "Oh, happy release day." And I'm like, oh, maybe I released too many books.
It's like, this one got lost in the mail.
I knew. Thank you. Okay.
Next time. That's for next week, though. Get those daffodils. Yeah. What's some advice that you would give to your younger self?
Don't wait.
That's good. When you write, do you write with a playlist or with music in the background, or do you like it silent?
So funny you mentioned that. So I do tend to write better if there's music in the background. And especially when I'm writing love scenes, which is, whatever, get to the mood,
Gotta
I
get in
guess.
the mood.
It gives you a rhythm too. And
Yeah.
so, but I don't necessarily, like, I'll have I just have generic writing lists. And then for some books, I have put together a list. Like, so this book that I just finished, there was like this thread of unrequited love and angst. And so I found a bunch of songs with sort of those themes. And then I maybe listened to it once all the way through. Why? Why? And it's like, I know I should turn the music on, but I'm a person, like, I like to, like, for a long time I drive in the car and I don't listen to anything because I'm just I'm thinking, I'm plotting a book or whatever. Now I'm like super addicted to a bunch of different historical podcasts, so I'm listening to that. But yeah,
it's so funny. I love it. Who was your most challenging secondary character to write?
Oh. Secondary care. No, that's a really hard question. I find the longer I write, I mean, and I'm really into, like, I think I said, big cast of characters. So I really like lots of people. And sometimes that's maybe not a good thing. In this book, Guy Duke, when I revised it after I wrote the draft, and then I'm like, we don't need that person. We don't need that person. But I find villains to be very challenging because I don't write from a villain point of view ever. I just write from the hero and the heroine's point of view. And but I want a villain to be a fully realized person, right? I mean, they have a reason, unless they're total psychopath, I guess. They have a reason for doing what they're doing. And so I just really try to do that. There's a villain in so I have this series, it's set mostly in Wales, so that's a different location for you, and it's sort of Indiana Jones in the Regency. It's like an action adventure. They're searching for different treasures in the books, and there's a guy he's the father of the heroine in the last book, but he'd been like a mentor to that hero, and then he realizes that he's really the villain. And so it was a very nuanced thing to write, because a lot of, like I said, I don't write from his point of view, and some of this stuff happened off the page, and so that's hard, I think.
Yeah, that sounds challenging. Well, we have time for a couple more questions before I turn this over to the readers. So I just wanted to make sure that you, if readers wanted to stay in touch with you and find out more about you, where can they find you online?
So I have a website, darcyburke.com, and you can sign up for my newsletter there. I send out a newsletter fortnightly, and it includes, like, I keep a diary and I usually send pictures of my cat, or my son is really into wildlife photography, so I'll send pictures that we take of cool birds and stuff, and other kinds of things that I'm up to. And then I have a Facebook group called Darcy's Duchesses, and then I have another one called Burke's Book Lovers, which is for contemporary romance. And that's probably where I spend the most time, except for when Facebook suspended me from groups because they were mean.
They're rude.
I know, for like 5 days last month, and I can't even. I mean, there were 5 posts, but it was stuff posting in my own group, and then when the suspension was like, but you can still post in your own groups. No, I couldn't.
No, I couldn't.
They wouldn't even let me do that. And there's no recourse. Like, there's no one to call. There's no. Yeah. So
yeah. No, Facebook's like, no, sorry, you're in control.
Yeah. And then I do, I'm really good at Instagram for a while, and then I'll stop looking at Instagram, because when I'm writing a book, when I get into the last couple of weeks of it's like reading a book, right? And I mean, it takes longer than reading a book, but when you're getting toward the end, you don't want to put it down. And that's how I'm with writing a book too. And so I'll get into a period where I'm just not really on social much at all.
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. Well, Darcy, thank you so much for your time tonight. I'm going to turn this over to our readers for some unrecorded questions for you.
Okay.